Welcome to Whispering Shadows, where the dark and mysterious come to life. Tonight, we unravel the chilling tale of the Whispers of Ravencrest Bay, a seaside estate, a haunting legacy, and whispers that refuse to be silenced. This story will keep you on edge until the very last word. If you enjoy eerie tales and thrilling mysteries, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a shadowy story. Now, settle in and let the whispers guide you. The Whispers of Ravencrest Bay. Chapter 1. The Unforeseen Letter. For 3 nights in a row, Celia Lennox dreamed of black waves crashing against a rocky shore. She'd wake drenched in sweat, convinced she heard someone calling her name. The morning after the 3rd dream, a letter arrived. Miss Lennox, I regret to inform you that your great-uncle Ambrose has passed. You are named beneficiary of his estate, situated in Ravencrest Bay. It is urgent you attend to the property at once. Celia's mother had rarely spoken of Uncle Ambrose. She only recalled him as a reclusive figure who retreated to a seaside mansion decades ago. The letter's formal tone rattled Celia. She was all he had left? Curiosity mingled with unease. She'd never heard of Ravencrest Bay, but the letter's instructions were explicit. She must claim the estate or forfeit her inheritance. What inheritance could a man like Ambrose possibly leave? Tucking the letter away, Celia tried to ignore the flicker of excitement that accompanied her dread. She was 26, stuck in a dull job, no close family to speak of, and living in a small rented flat. Maybe it's time for a change, she thought. Still, that night, the nightmares returned. She saw a grand house perched on wind-lashed cliffs. The dream felt too real. Battered spires, shattered windows, and a faint light flickering in an upper window. A voice, hoarse but insistent, whispered, "Come, come, see the truth." She woke at dawn, drenched in sweat and heart pounding like a drum. The next day, Celia boarded a train north, the letter in her coat pocket, nerves frayed by a sense of destiny. She wasn't sure if she believed in fate, but something pulled her to Ravencrest Bay. Perhaps Uncle Ambrose was guiding her from beyond the grave, or maybe it was the house itself, hungry for a new occupant. As the train rattled through misty moorland, Celia stared at the gray horizon, imagining the lonely coastline. She couldn't shake the feeling that the letter was more than an invitation to an old property. It was a summons, and refusing might have been more dangerous than accepting. Chapter 2. The First Glimpse of Ravencrest. Stepping off the train at a tiny station, Celia discovered the nameplate, Ravencrest Bay, faded letters clinging to rusted metal. A single cab idled nearby. She handed the driver the estate's address, and he gave a wary nod. "I'll take you as close as I can, miss," he said, tapping the meter. "But that place is on the cliff. Roads are rough." They set off, the countryside shifting from rolling farmland to stark, windswept moors. Low-hanging clouds turned the sky into a gray shroud. The driver attempted small talk, but Celia's mind drifted to the letter and her unsettling dreams. When they crested a hill, the sea came into view, a violent expanse of dark water crashing against jagged rocks. Perched above it stood Ambrose Manor, a sprawling Victorian monstrosity of weather-beaten stone and looming turrets. Even from a distance, Celia felt its presence like a living thing, watchful, patient. The driver left her at the end of a gravel lane choked by overgrown hedges. "That's all the further I go," he announced, glancing at the manor with unease. "Hope you'll be all right, miss." Then he sped off. Alone, Celia hefted her suitcase and trudged up the lane. Each step fueled a rising nervousness. The front gate was iron, rusted open, squealing on its hinges. The yard beyond was a wilderness of tall grass and gnarled trees. Black crows perched on a low stone wall, blinking as she passed, as if to say, "Welcome, intruder. Rounding a bend, she halted. The manor reared above her, towers, gargoyles, broken glass in half the windows. A battered porch jutted from the front, columns cracked from decades of salt air. Celia's stomach twisted. This can't be safe. Yet the door stood slightly ajar, as if expecting her. She gulped down her apprehension and stepped inside. The foyer was spacious but dim, dust motes drifting through cold light. A grand staircase curved upward, the banister thick with cobwebs. She heard only the distant crash of waves outside. From the gloom, a figure emerged, a tall man in a threadbare suit. He gave a stiff bow. "Welcome, Miss Lennox. I'm Marcus, caretaker of Ambrose Manor. We've been awaiting your arrival." Celia forced a polite nod, though her skin prickled. We? She wondered if someone else lived here. But behind Marcus, the hall was empty, silent. Who else is waiting for me in this house? Chapter 3. A House of Secrets. Marcus showed Celia to a sitting room, apologizing for the dust and lack of warmth. He lit a few kerosene lamps. The electricity lines had long since failed. The meager glow revealed faded wallpaper, tattered furniture, and a gloom that sank into every crevice. She set down her suitcase. I had no idea my uncle was living like this. When did he pass? Marcus's gaze shifted. Not long ago. A month, perhaps. He rarely left his room. If you'd like, I can show you to the study. He left documents, presumably about the estate. Her heart thudded. Yes, please. She followed him through a corridor lined with portraits. Each seemed to glare at her with oil-painted eyes. She paused at one depicting a stern-faced man with watery blue eyes. The nameplate read, Ambrose Lennox, 1934. The date of death was missing. Odd, she thought. The study was cramped, stuffed with books and old maps of the region. A battered desk dominated the center, covered in letters and journals. Marcus gestured. Your uncle's final notes are there. Celia approached the desk, flipping through a thin ledger. Most pages were financial scribbles, but near the end she found entries scrawled in frantic handwriting. I hear them again at night, the voices from the tide. They speak of an old family curse. Must protect the estate. Can't let them in. Another note read, Celia must never. It ended abruptly. The ink smear suggested the writing had stopped mid-sentence. A chill crept along her spine. Protect from what? Let who in? Marcus cleared his throat behind her. Madam, is there anything else you require? If not, I recommend an early night. The manor's structure can be unsettling after dusk. Unsettling. She understood that feeling all too well. As she turned to reply, she glimpsed a fleeting movement at the window, like a silhouette in the overgrown garden. But when she peered closer, it was gone. Chapter 4. Night Whispers. That first night, Celia's sleep was fitful. Her bed in a musty guest room squeaked whenever she shifted. Outside, the wind howled across the cliffs, rattling shutters. She woke near midnight to a soft, rhythmic knocking on her door. Her pulse slammed. Who's there? Silence. She inched out of bed and cracked the door open, peering into the unlit corridor. Empty. Yet down the hall, she heard a faint dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across floorboards. Grabbing a lamp, she tiptoed down the corridor. The noise seemed to emanate from behind a locked door at the far end. The door handle rattled, as if something inside tried to open it. A wave of panic seized her. She turned to flee, only to freeze at a voice. Celia. She recognized that voice from her nightmares. A low rasp, male, desperate. Uncle Ambrose? Celia, help. It's too dark. Open the door. The handle shook again. Heart hammering, she tested the knob. Locked. Fear warred with concern. She rummaged for a key but found none. The voice repeated, "Open, or it will take me forever." Trembling, she retreated, unable to face the possibility of a ghostly presence. The corridor felt suffocating, the house's shadows pressing in. She fled to her room, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night with the lamp burning. The voice never came again, but the sense of an unseen occupant weighed heavily on her mind. Chapter 5. The Sea's Call. By morning, exhaustion pulled at her. Marcus offered no explanation for night noises, only a vague smile. Determined not to cower, Celia decided to explore the grounds in daylight. She found the manor's rear garden a tangled mess of brambles. A stone path led toward the cliffs, where a wrought iron fence overlooked the sea. The gray ocean churned below, waves smashing into jagged rocks. As she gazed out, a whisper of wind seemed to murmur her name. She shivered. Was the house's influence seeping beyond its walls? She followed the fence line to a small stone chapel perched near the cliff edge. Its door hung ajar. Inside, rows of crumbling pews faced an altar, carved with symbols she didn't recognize. On a dais lay a heavy chest, unlocked. Within she found old scrolls referencing the Lennox lineage and mentions of a covenant with the sea. Chills prickled her arms, reading lines about a debt owed and the heir must fulfill the promise. Heir. That's me, she realized. Her uncle must have inherited this bizarre covenant. Now it passed to Celia? She replaced the scrolls, unsettled. The sea roared behind her, like an entity hungry for attention. Returning to the manor, her steps quickened. She needed answers, and Marcus was hiding something. Chapter 6. Confrontations and Revelations. Celia cornered Marcus in the study that afternoon, demanding the truth about Ambrose's final days. He evaded at first, but her insistence wore him down. "My father served Ambrose before me," Marcus confessed, voice trembling. "He told me of a curse dating back generations. The Lennox family once made a pact with something in the sea. For prosperity or safety, I'm not certain. But each generation, the next heir must stay here, or the forces of that pact will claim them. Ambrose tried to break the chain, but in the end, he succumbed." Celia's chest tightened. Claim them. How? Marcus averted his eyes. Some vanish, driven mad by night voices. Others throw themselves into the sea. It's said the house stands as a barrier, containing whatever dark presence prowls the cliffs. But if the heir leaves, the barrier fails, unleashing horrors. Her mind reeled. Me, caretaker of a haunted coastal estate? She recalled the corridor voice, the locked door. Was Ambrose's spirit trapped inside, or was it something else imitating him? That evening, a storm gathered. Lightning flashed over the moors, wind rattling old window panes. As Celia paced the foyer, the door at the corridor's end hammered again. Someone or something within demanded release. She resolved to face it. The truth couldn't be worse than fear. With Marcus's help, she found a ring of keys in Ambrose's desk. The largest one matched the corridor door's ornate lock. Heart pounding, Celia approached the door. Thunder boomed, candlelight dancing across her face. She turned the key. The lock clicked. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Chapter 7. The Tides of Fate. The room beyond was a study or lounge, its furniture rotted and strewn with old sea charts. A single tall window faced the ocean, and in the center stood Uncle Ambrose. But no, it was merely his corpse, upright, supported by ropes around its torso. Mummified in the damp air, the face twisted in agony. Celia stifled a scream. Marcus staggered back, horrified. "He never left this room? Then who performed the funeral?" He trailed off, realization dawning that there was never a proper burial. As Celia crept closer, the corpse's eyes seemed to flick open. Her blood froze. An unholy whisper hissed from shriveled lips. "You came. The sea must feed." She stumbled back. The rope jerked, snapping. The corpse slumped forward, nearly toppling onto her. In its hand, clutched to the bone, was a large key with a wave-carved handle. Reflexively, Celia pried it free. An electric jolt shot through her arm. She felt a presence swirl around them, howling through the storm-lashed windows. Marcus shouted, "Get out!" But Celia realized the key matched the chapel chest's lock. The vow in the scrolls, the heir must fulfill it. She recalled the line, "The heir must secure the house, or doom follows." Lightning illuminated the corridor as she fled the room, the stench of decay clinging to her clothes. "If I run from here, I'll be pursued by nightmares forever." The house wanted something completed, an offering or a ritual to close the curse. She had to try. She braved the storm to the chapel. Inside, her lamp flickered across the dais. She slid the wave-handled key into the chest. It fit perfectly. Within, a hidden compartment revealed a tarnished silver dagger and an ancient parchment scrawled with incantations referencing blood and salt. The final lines read, "Carve the symbol, seal the vow, or the sea shall take all." Her breath came in ragged gasps. The lightning crashed, the sea roaring just outside the chapel. She heard footsteps behind, Marcus, eyes wide. "Do it," he whispered. "Whatever it is, end this." Trembling, Celia lifted the dagger. She traced the parchment's instructions, a small cut on her palm, letting a few drops of blood drip onto the symbol. Then she recited the incantation, voice quaking. The wind howled, the chapel's walls shuddering as if the sea itself pounded at its doors. A surge of pain lanced through her cut. The silver dagger glowed faintly. The thunder peaked, and a final bolt of lightning struck near the chapel. Celia collapsed to her knees, senses overwhelmed. In that deafening moment, she glimpsed a massive shape in the storm clouds, like a monstrous silhouette. Then darkness. Epilogue. Sea of silence. At dawn, calm lay over Ravencrest Bay. The storm had passed without a trace, leaving the moors eerily quiet. Celia awoke on the chapel floor, the dagger cool in her hand. Marcus slumped nearby, alive but dazed. They stumbled outside to find the sea oddly placid. The terror from the night before felt like a fading nightmare, yet evidence of it lingered. Charred cracks in the chapel stone, the dagger's silver blade now blackened at the tip. Back at the manor, the locked room was empty. Ambrose's corpse vanished, perhaps whisked away by the sea or some other force. The corridor felt lighter, the house less oppressive. Had Celia's sacrifice sealed the vow anew? In the days that followed, she tidied the manor, sealed broken windows, and let the ocean breeze cleanse its stale air. Marcus aided her. The nightmares ceased. She realized she felt tied to this place, as if part of the curse or covenant remained in her veins. But at least it's contained, she told herself. Some nights, she still woke to the crash of waves, half expecting the robed figure or Ambrose's spirit. But the voices were gone. The estate was quiet. She knew leaving might risk unleashing something once more. For better or worse, Ravencrest Bay was her home now. And so Celia stayed, caretaker of an ancient pact, living by the ragged coastline. Each morning she'd watch the sea, recalling the monstrous silhouette. She had fulfilled the vow. For how long? Did the ocean bide its time, waiting for another generation? She had no certainty. But as gulls wheeled overhead, she felt a fragile peace. The moorland wind carried no more whispers. Ravencrest Bay slept, for now. The end